Innovation, it's one word. It can mean an awful lot to all sorts of people. It's also one of the latest buzzwords from governments. She says on Budget Day, and I've just been told that it has started. So I wonder if there's going to be any additional money for innovation today. And we're looking out because, as we probably all know, innovation is the engine that drives growth, resilience, and in today's world of fast changing everything, it seems, it's increasingly relevant. So we always need to find new and better ways to create value. And it's not always just about groundbreaking technology or flashy products. It's about improving how we serve our customers, how we operate internally, how we adapt to a change, etc., etc. It's about streamlining a process, rethinking a business model, or launching a new service. It's about solving problems creatively and staying ahead of the curve. So what does it mean for your business? Well, and how can you pick up on the opportunities that it creates? I'm delighted to say that today we've got our guest speaker, Graham Beaver, with us from Innovate UK, who's going to go into everything in much more detail. But I wonder, just before we start, whether it would be helpful just to very quickly introduce ourselves, partly because I'd quite like this to be an interactive session. You can ask as many questions as you like. So rather than poor old Graham talking to himself for an hour, it would be good to have any questions. And if you do have any questions, either stick your hand up or pop it into chat. Either way, we don't mind. But so let's kick off. I'm Heather Dean, and my role at Buckinghamshire Business First is as Head of Skills and Business Support. And that's why I'm here today introducing us. Anand, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
Do you just like to kick off and just say your name and who you're from and anything about yourself that you want to share, really?
Definitely. Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. So yeah, as you see, my name is Anand. Full name is Anand Kumar. So I kind of following the business first and your programs and events. Maybe never had chance to come in person, but I just thought I will come and see what sort of knowledge is shared and what support is available. So I am kind of professional background, kind of banking strategy, and it's predominantly on commercial pricing. And I'm kind of in a journey now, just to try to see to launch a kind of product in a sports industry. And I have been speaking to I used to work in Barclays a while ago, and I got involved in something called accelerator labs. They had some robotics kind of a division within the accelerator, and I kind of had a little bit of experience developing robotics there. So I'm just trying to launch something related to robotics and AI. So I just thought I will just dip in and see what sort of resources and support is available. In a nutshell, yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And we do know about the Accelerator Lab, so welcome. Antoinette, do you just quickly like to introduce, are you able to quickly introduce yourself?
Oh, hi there. Yeah, I'm not going to turn my camera back on, sorry.
No, don't worry.
But yeah, I'm Antoinette Willis. So I've only just recently found out about Business First from my business partner. Never been in business before. So we were just starting a social enterprise. It's called Out of the Box Learning. It's educational subscription boxes, mainly for children who may be homeschooled.
Brilliant. Well, thank you and welcome, and good luck with the business. Mike.
Sorry, let me unmute. Hi, I'm Mike. I run a small software business based in Marlow. We basically specialize in price intelligence. We help retailers and brands to track pricing across markets. and provide them with some software tools and analytics to help them make faster, smarter pricing decisions. So my interest really is what support is available to maybe help us to grow our business and to fund our business.
Well, hopefully you've come to the right place, Mike, but welcome and good to have you here.
Thank you.
Nigel.
Hi, Nigel Adams, Director of the Buckingham Enterprise and Innovation Unit, helping to become the Buckingham Sustainable Innovation and Enterprise Unit. But we're working on that because we've been funded, and I'm part of the University of Buckingham, but we've been funded for many years by a very rich alumna, I won't name, and that money has now run out. And having asked her again, she's said no. So I'm quite happy to talk to people about problems of getting funding. And I'm now on the search for more. I've got various ways of asking for it. You could say, why can't the University of Buckingham pay? Well, that's a very good question, because the University of Buckingham, like every other university, has got some interesting challenges with financing, shall we put. And well, that's where we are at the moment. Heather knows the full story. It's quite entertaining. We've known each other for many years, and Nigel keeps following the Churchill tradition of KBO. Which I'm sure you possibly know what that means, and I'm not going to repeat it on the air.
Thank you, Nigel. It's rapidly shutting him down. Welcome, Nigel. And last but not least, Nzinga, apologies, you've just joined us. We're just introducing ourselves before we kick off. Are you able to just give a very, very brief introduction to yourself? And Nzinga, are you able to join?
Can you see and hear me okay?
We can hear you. Hi, welcome
see
to
and
the
hear me?
meeting.
Hi there, hi. Nzinga Orgil, I have a company called ABITY. We specialise in inclusive tourism, creating experiences for customers, employees, supply chain, and local communities. I'm based in Buckinghamshire, and I thought I'd jump in and find out a little bit more about the whole piece around innovation. And yeah, it's my first session, so open to understanding more. And nice to see you all.
So welcome, Nzinga. It's lovely to have you with us. So, and also Sarah is loitering in the background, and she's there for any technical hitches and to come to our rescue. Thank you, Sarah, and and keeping us all on board. I'm going to hand over now to Graham. Graham, feel free to take over the slides. And I will just say, as we've said before, please feel free to put your hands up or put questions into chat. We will pause throughout the meeting to take questions. But if there's anything urgent as we're going through, then do put your hand up. And yeah, we'll deal with it. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me and not watching Rachel Reeves deliver the sort of budget spending review, although I'm sure we'll be catching up on that later, and I know most people in this kind of sector will be. So the title of today's presentation is Winning Innovate UK Grants, but I really appreciate your introductions and maybe some other things I can pick up on through that as well. Nigel, I'd love to have the golden goose to help you also, but I don't think that will happen. But listen, let me push on with the presentation. I welcome questions or digital hands up in the sort of chat, and I will be stopping for sort of questions at certain times. So it's actually really good to have a smaller audience, and hopefully we can get down to some of that nitty gritty. But I'm going to kick off with a quick kind of introduction of what we'll cover. So we're going to look at the various types of Innovate UK grants, and I'll obviously be specifically looking at Innovate UK, but a lot of the themes you'll hear today will be flowing through other grant application processes. We're going to look at how they work, what's the kind of process, what's the ins and outs, and is it actually free money? And then, of course, typical questions. If you are actually going to put in an application, how how should you answer them, because a lot of it is down to how well it's put forward. So we'll break that down as well and see if we can help you understand those a little easier. Very quickly about me, this is my LinkedIn QR code. I have one of the most awkward email addresses, but luckily I'm one of the only Graham Beavers on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me, please just search up and connect. I look after the stakeholders, partnerships and delivery, as well as being an innovation and growth specialist, work with clients one-to-one. And essentially I'm just here to kind of connect people, both organizations, individuals, companies, try and find the right door and offer that advice to you. I work for Innovate UK, who are part of the UKRI set up here. So flashing across our screens, we can see that there's 9 institutions, currently with 7 billion a year, that essentially funds research and innovation through the various councils and various UKRI makeups. Innovate UK themselves are the UK's innovation agency. So this is where the government funding will come to. Our mission is to help companies grow through developing the sort of commercialization of their products, their services. You know, it doesn't have to be the latest widget, but it does have to have some kind of innovation. That could be the process part of it. It could be the actual end delivery. It could be the kind of use of AI or something, which of course is a big thing nowadays. So, you know, that's what we really look into. So there should be some innovation in the name, essentially. The best way to describe Innovate UK is using circles and lines, essentially. So the left-hand side of Innovate UK is all about funding, and lots of people think about Innovate grants. And of course, we'll cover that today. Innovate UK also do supply loans. So we have an Innovate loan scheme, off the top of my head, from 100k to 2 million quid, roughly about 7.4% for R&D. So if you want to take out a loan, you can do so through Innovate UK. We also offer investor partnerships and procurement services. And then on the other side of things, I think Anand mentioned this, and also Mike, we offer support. So just like Bucks Business First, who offer some fabulous business support services, we do very similar things, but of course along the innovation line. So I work in the business growth team, which is down on the bottom here at the growth and scaling support. But we also have a very good infrastructure and ecosystem, a great global network, a very good connecting network, lots of sort of tools and expertise and talent and skills. And all of the UK Innovate system is publicly funded, which essentially boils down to it being a free service that SMEs can access. So bear that in mind when we're talking in the future. And I'll be grateful to any further one-to-one conversations as you'd like after this call. So now I'm going to talk about the grants and where you find them. Well, Google is your friend. If you type in Innovate UK grants, you will probably come up on the first one to Innovate UK. Might be the second one, because there is a company called Grantify who spend a lot of money on SEO to get you to apply through them. Now, Grantify are just a bid writing service who spend a lot of money on SEO, so don't be confused by the two. So Google Innovate UK grants, you'll find the link and you'll come on to the types of funds that are out there. So as of this morning, there are 27 Innovate UK grants available, and they look a little bit like this. So this is one of the examples. It's the Contracts for Innovation Net Zero Living Tech Trials Phase 3. So there's already been 2 phases. There's £800,000 available in total, but of course that pot is going to be shared, and it gives you a very brief bit of eligibility, tells you when it's opening and when it closes. And here is a 6-week window you can see as to when it opens and when the last date for applications is. So you might be thinking 6 weeks is enough, but I'll come on to that shortly, because it probably isn't. Now, these grants, they are actually competitions. They are competitive. The reason that they are competitive is that Innovate UK and UK PLC essentially want to fund the best projects to give them the best chance of being worldwide leading in this area. So bear that in mind when you are applying. You know, the funding opportunity, you're probably looking at around a 5 to 8% success rate. And that may be, even if your idea is the best thing since sliced bread, there may be others that are better, or there may only be so much money available. So applying for a grant is a competitive process. So just bear that in mind. When you're looking at these specific grants from that website, you'll find that there are 6 tabs who are going to be needing to be looked at in detail, and I'll go through these in some detail actually now. So eligibility. So here's a very busy chart, and the slides will be shared from here. But the first thing is, are you eligible? So, is this actually going to work? Do you have the right criteria? Have you a limited business? Are you actually going through the right stages, or do you have the partnerships available to actually make this work? Ideally, you have to be a limited company in the UK. That's generally goes without saying. You can apply generally about twice for each grant. But when you are doing a project, it's either going to be single or collaboratively. Collaboratively could be with a university or a research organisation. If your organisation is collaborating, you need to really have a good strength of that relationship, and you also need to be aligned on the project length. So how long is it actually going to take you, and will it actually fit in with the timeline of how the grant will want to be acted upon as well? You of course need project costs, you need a financial plan and dates, and they need to be success dates during the project's time. And then hopefully once you've got all of that, you can kind of tick boxes on your eligibility. So that's the first stage. Are you actually eligible? Will it actually work for how your business is set up? Second thing is the scope of the actual project, or the competition, as I'm going to try and keep referring to it. If you're looking at a specific sector or a specific challenge or a theme, you must look at how that is addressed from Innovate's perspective. So I'm going to use one here, which is not the one that we previously had, but this project needed 4 industry subsectors. So it was livestock, plant, food production and bioeconomy related. So, does your solution fit this criteria? And then drilling down a little bit more, if you're looking at livestock, you need to be looking at increasing efficiencies and feed efficiencies and animal health. And then for plants, does it reduce fossil fuels, etc.? So it really does start to sort of break down and funnel down that narrative. Even further is the research categories. So if you are going to do R&D, which ideally you should be when you're applying for a grant, how does that research actually come across? Is it feasibility studies? Are you doing experiments, or are you actually doing some fundamental research? And that will probably be through collaboration as well. And then there's lots of information about what is not funded. So some key things for this specific project, it's going to focus on maritime, it's going to focus on it won't focus on maritime, it won't focus on battery development, won't focus on combustion engines, etc., etc. So you can see there's a long list of things that they won't do. Some common themes of funding that it won't support: generally doesn't support kind of marketing, generally doesn't support sales, generally doesn't support just growing your team. So if you're a new business and you're looking at all those kind of things, I probably would put your effort into picking up the phone and making calls and doing social media rather than looking at applying for a grant, because those are generally things that aren't funded through grant projects. Occasionally they are, but rarely. And there's another slide here about other things that are not funded. So can you see it's quite negative, if I'm completely honest, but the reason is to make sure that the application is very clear and cut in achieving its goal in net zero, for example. So yeah, some of the things here are, technology which isn't evident, no ROI, so what's it actually going to achieve, or if there is no other support available. So again, lots of reading about the actual grant themselves and the scope of that. Then we have the timescales, and I mentioned it earlier. Here is an example of a kind of 6-week window from when the competition opens in the 19th of May to when it closes on the 25th of June. That's an average time. Some are shorter, some are longer. If you don't have a good, I'd say at least 3-week period to prepare a grant application. If you've never done it before, then you probably shouldn't be applying this time around. You really do need to spend a lot of time, dedicated time as well, to put your application together, because you'll find through the process that you'll need more things to be done: business plans, collaborations, agreements, potentially financial forecasts. So you really do need to kind of get your ducks in a row, if I'm honest. Now, lots of companies that I talk to, even if they're not successful, actually find the process quite rewarding, because it does make you kind of dig deep into the business and do that kind of business review. You know, it's forced, so as an exercise it is actually quite useful, but you know, don't go in with kind of a closed mindset. It's a big job, which is why there are businesses such as Grantify and others set up who can do that kind of heavy lifting for you. They will obviously charge you for that service, normally a flat fee and or a percentage at the end if they're successful. But of course, they can't guarantee that success, despite them telling you otherwise. So just bear that in mind. You either do the application yourself, locked in a room for 2 weeks with no windows and water, or you know, explore the opportunity with a grant writing firm or service. So timescales really do need planning. Part of the reason you need that planning is also when you get paid. So if you are successful in your grant application and you get the money, happy days, of course, are ahead, but you do need to plan in the finances, because, to cut a long story short, as this slide does its best to explain, you're generally paid in arrears for the monies that are given to you. So you get 100 grand for your project over 12 months, you're probably going to get that split over 4 quarters, you know, 25 grand a quarter. Can you actually make that work? Does that fit in with your financial forecast? Or have you got the grant really because you need to, you know, take that thing off the runway straight away? You really need to think about that, do some financial modelling, and of course the process will most probably change in your business in a 12-month period, because things do change. And if they do change, that's great, but you will need to talk to your monitoring officer, essentially like an auditor, who is assigned to your grant application, to make sure they're aware of the changes in your business. You know, you might get a new client come on board who takes all your time. You might have to change a process. So the project you originally applied for may have to change. And if it does, you'll need to complete some further paperwork to advise Innovate of that, so that you can make sure that you can draw down on your next payment. So yeah, can you afford a grant? Might sound a bit silly, but it's actually a critical piece of information to bear in mind. Collaboratively, so if you're collaborating with an outside organisation, an RTO, research technology organisation, academia, or even subcontractors, there's going to be a split cost on that respect. So, you know, that 100% is already dwindling. It could go down to as little as kind of 30%, or it normally sits around called a 70 if you're collaborating with other institutions. Now, this will vary depending on the institution that you're using, and you may have to collaborate because there are some fantastic places out there that can do the work for you, you know, laboratories in universities as an example, or research technology organisations that have their own £15,000 catapult grant at the moment, which is a separate item to this, but something really useful to get your business going. So bear that in mind as well when you're structuring the collaboration and the costs in total. So if you're looking at feasibility studies as an example, if you're a micro business, you could probably claim 70%. If you're doing experimental projects, then you're probably only going to get 45%. So pardon me, again, looking at the criteria and the eligibility within those 6 tabs on the screen when you first apply, you really need to start sort of breaking down that £100,000 is only now 45,000. Is that actually going to be enough? Is it going to be worth you spending those 2 weeks to actually apply for it with a 5-ish% chance of success? So all these things need careful consideration when you're planning. And then how to apply? Well, it's pretty simple. It's all done online. You click the button once you're key to start the application, and you literally start that process, start filling in the forms. Now, once you've submitted the application and you've come away, well, actually, just before we do that, when you start, make sure you save your data on a regular occasion. It does save as you go, but please use that save button once you do it. I don't want anyone to lose their data and then, you know, lose that work. And then once you have applied, it will go through for assessment. Now, this assessment is done by these things called human beings. There is no AI involved in this. I'm just going to hasten to add and highlight that point. Just to use the AI moniker at the moment, people do write applications using AI. Some have been successful, I can't deny it. And I'm only told this by the successful applicants. There are others that aren't. And it, of course, is a thing that isn't going away. I would personally probably use AI to do a lot of the research, but I personally wouldn't use it to write the application, only because it's quite easy to see, and I believe tools can be used to weed that out. But when your assessment is put forward, you'll normally go to between 3 and 5 assessors. One of those individuals will generally be a sector expert, so they will have knowledge in the field that you are applying for. Each question will be kind of weighted out of 10. Normally with equal weighting. You will have either a top-down approach or a portfolio approach. Top-down meaning the highest scores go, or portfolio the best across the applications. There is moderation for outlying scores, so they normally will go to a separate moderator, and normally it's between 400 and 600 words as to the size of the application. So that's how the grant will be assessed. That's who it will go to. And these individuals who assess the applications are generally generally have experience of the grants or the sectors that are put forward to them. And I'm just going to go to the application, but before we do, I'm just going to pause for questions because I'm conscious I've spoken a lot at you, and I'm just wanted to ask the opportunity, unmute yourself or put a something in the chat if you have any questions.
Well done, Graham. I was wondering when you were going to pause. Any questions from anybody?
Quick question, Graham. You mentioned that the success rate was pretty low in terms of, setting expectation, which is fine. But you also mentioned that there's a lot of work involved. And, for a small business with limited resources, I know from my own personal point of view, I would struggle to spend a week putting a bid together if I've only got a small percentage chance of getting through. Is that just the nature of the beast and that's the end of it, sort of thing?
It is, unfortunately, Mike. Yeah, look, it's a really good question. It's I think it's one of those things where you really do need to do the research into, is this the right thing for your business? Because rightly so, 5% chance of, let's just say, a £10,000 grant, probably not worth it for most people. £250,000 grant, okay, yeah, it might be a bigger opportunity, but you do really need to sort of sit down and go, right, return on my time investment, because time is the only thing that nobody can get more of. Is it actually right? I'm going to write this application. If you want to do it as a business exercise and you are, looking for that as well, fair enough. But yeah, would that time be better spent calling 5 of your customers and trying to increase the revenue from them, or redeveloping a marketing plan? Or should it be something that you split over that time to do certain parts of it, just to gain that experience? Or if you of course can outsource it to a grant writer. But it's a very tough one, because you're right, lots of people do not have the time to put into this, and that's the real thing it needs. And it is a big thing. We have seen a shift from the grants that were launched in the last couple of years. They have got a bit smarter, they have got a bit slicker, a bit smoother, and the process is easier, but it's still intensive, and I can't sort of change that fact, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
Nigel.
Again, coming at it, I'm sorry to be the cynical old but also, even if you score what you might think are high marks and the panel are all saying wonderful things about you, I'm a cynical side. I think through the research groups, not necessarily your group, but the ones involved with more universities, it seems to me that the Russell group get more than anybody else. And it's one of those strange things that the universities that are out in the bundu don't nearly ever get it. We even tried to get on a scheme with the Open University, try and improve that. They chopped us out of that and went for the big boys. Now, if you couldn't compare the Open University and the University of Buckingham as two very different ones going in with an idea, with support from the people. So I'm horrible in being this like this, but I think it's important people know, because there are times, Mike and the others, when it is definitely worth it, and it might be worth doing it with a few other people who could involved, because again, that works better. We work with the Open University and it worked very well, and it brings you with other people, which gets your networking going, and it's, but it's still a lot of time. I agree, Mike.
Yeah.
Sorry to be an old cynic.
Not Nigel, not at all. I think you just highlighted a really good fact, is that collaboration aspect. If you can collaborate on these things, share those best practices, put a grant together, application together with other companies, that also is a very good plus point for the assessors, because they're seeing that collaboration, they're seeing that cross-fertilization of ideas. So yeah, can be a really good thing. Okay, thank you very much for your questions. I'm going to push on with the rest of the slides, and I'll make an upfront apology that they are quite wordy. I'm going to go through them as best I can, and there are a copy available afterwards for reference purposes. So we're going to move on to the application. And the initial questions, well, of course, you've got the project summary. So be clear about what it is going to do and what makes it innovative, okay? Think about a young person reading this for the first time. Can they understand it? And when I say young, I'm talking, a teenager. Is it done in that simpler format? Also, what's the project in detail and the public description of it? This could be a marketing tool in the future, so don't put anything commercially sensitive in there. They're not going to ask you to, they're not going to sign any NDAs or anything, but please make sure that this also fits in with the lines of your business. And then, of course, you've got the scope, how it fits in with the scope that's been described, or work reversely, how it doesn't fit in with things that aren't allowed. So the need or the challenge, well, what's the motivation behind this kind of innovation? What's the business need? Don't just Google that your market is worth 600 trillion. Have a look at the market in detail. I see so many people with a pitch deck that says the market is this big and they're going to take 0.1% of it. You're not. Just be realistic, be human about it. Break it down even to a kind of local, regional, national level, or just say you want 1% of the market, which will give you this. Start small. The big market is always going to be the big market, but just make it sort of digestible, I think is the word, for the assessor. Don't big up something that is probably not going to get there, even if you're Amazon. Also, make sure that you've really understood the kind of the technology that you're using, or the market opportunity. The market research and the market research and the market research is critical here. If you already have customers that are paying and you have a kind of MVP, that's even better, because you've got your own data that you can utilize. And this is obviously going to be dependent on the grant itself. And then the approach. So, what are you going to do with the approach? Why is this innovation going to be better, more competitive than what is out there at the moment? How does it add that extra value, and how does it consider things that haven't been considered before? So, Mike, I'm just thinking about you as you gave a good explanation of your business. What's different? What's your USP? Who are the competitors, and why are you going to do this differently than somebody else is? So that could be the other thing to put it on there. But again, you need to utilize this in a very simple manner. And there's a note here that says optional, 2 A4-page PDF appendix. Now, optional is in inverted commas, because actually, if you're not attaching some optional data, you're probably not going to get through, because you haven't gone a kind of above and beyond. So anything that is optional, make sure you add it in. Add in a 2-page PDF of other bits and bobs that will be relevant. And I'll come on to that in a second with other sectors. Team and resources. So again, you need to give a good CV history of these individuals, not just their LinkedIn page, but what they're bringing to the party. So if you've recently put together a structure, and you've got a CTO and a CFO and a CEO, you know, where have these people come from? What's their track record? And what have they done before? You know, have they helped raise? Have they got into international? Have they brought a product to market? You know, really the nuts and the bolts of these people, their CVs, if you attach them to as the appendix, that is a great start, but also achievements as well. Of course, if they've won awards or they have fantastic academic criteria, then again, the more the better. Just put it in there. This will be really impressive to the assessor because they get to see the people and they can do a bit more research on them. Market awareness, it goes back to what I said start of all. Sorry, on the first page, question 1. You know, where are the markets? Start small, build out those markets and build out those potentials. Something I'm sure you've already got in mind anyway with your business, but where are those opportunities? It's good to do a SWOT or a pestle analysis of this and maybe attach that as an appendix as well. Really useful thing to give somebody the understanding of the market. Like, you know, when you have customers, you know, if somebody knows what you do and gets it, they're going to be a customer because they get it, they can see the potential. But somebody who doesn't have an understanding of your market, how can you help them understand that? So treat those assessors like those individuals. And then, of course, the outcomes. What are the outcomes as a result of your project? So describe and explain all the good stuff, what can happen, and of course, all the fantastic things that you want to achieve, but also bear in mind there may be some risks that you need to assess. So you may need to you will need to do a risk register if you've not done one before. And this is perfectly fine to do. It's not perfectly fine to not do, if that's good grammar, which I don't think it is. But please don't forget to do a risk register and be honest, because this will show a good assessment of your business. Also think about the impacts of your project to the wider team, shall we say. So it could be other clients, other customers, the environment, government, policies. You know, these could be things to also bear in mind that you might not have thought about at this stage. So if this project gets funding, well, will it actually give an opportunity for other areas of businesses or public sectors or the environment? So, you know, something you might not have thought about when you started the application. And then, of course, project management. Again, submitting a project plan or a Gantt chart is a kind of an essential, but you need to break this timeline out, put this in an easy to understand, approachable model as possible. Of course, if you've got experience of doing this before, this is a given. If not, link it in with your financial milestones as well, to make sure that the packages that are going to be delivered are taken on board and can be delivered at that time. So yeah, please put through quite a detailed plan, and this plan may be referenced if you are successful when you get the grant. It may be used as a plan that they use as milestones for you, so bear that in mind. And then, of course, risks, as I've said earlier. So attaching a risk register is key. If you haven't seen or done a risk register before, it looks a little like this. This is a very simplified version, but essentially you've identified the type, what the risk actually is, its probability and impact, any mitigation to reduce the impact of that risk, and then, of course, after that mitigation, you know, what risk it will be and who's going to own it. And these generally will be your name all over it unless you have a team. So very simple risk register, shouldn't be too difficult to complete. And then, of course, think about the added value. So money aside of what it's going to achieve, what's the added value that it's going to give? What difference will the public funding make? And also, why is this public funding needed? So think about the kind of, this goes back to question, I think it was 6, the wider impacts. What is the kind of impact on the public? What is the impact on the environment and the whole R&D activity? What else is going to add some added value? And then, of course, costs and value for money. So why is this going to be value for money for the taxpayer? You know, why should it be from the public purse, essentially? And what sort of cost will be involved in terms of the partnering? So, for example, if you're going to partner with a government organisation to help do partner projects, well, that's kind of coming back in a really good way. So that will be a great thing to help explain. So some of the key points we've discussed, that's my death by PowerPoint of all of those 10 questions. So I hope that was useful, and there will be a copy afterwards. First and foremost, make sure you're picking the right grant. You know, that eligibility side of things, and of course if it's doable, as Mike asked earlier. Financial capability, you know, don't just go for a grant to get you out of something at the moment. It needs to be long-term and built into that financial stability. You know, ultimately, I don't think we talk enough about getting customers and selling sometimes. So don't put this in as this will get me through. You know, don't rely on it. Make sure there are other means as well available. Get your team together. You know, of course, if you're an SME, a solopreneur, that is you, and it is all on you. But if you have the opportunity to gather a larger team or collaborate, you know, please make sure that their details are shared. And make sure you go through each sub bullet point, attaching those appendices, uploading those CVs, those financial forecasts. The more, the better. You know, that will give you that standout opportunity against the next person. The last one, yeah, attaching those appendices is critical. So that's me. That's another QR code which will take you to Innovate UK business growth. But I think now we're all good friends, and we can connect together if you haven't any further questions after this. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
You've stunned them into silence, Graham.
Indeed.
Last chance for any questions.
Sorry, I was in between. I had to cut out because of my battery. So I think the examples you provided, Graham, was really helpful, and in terms of flowing through the process was really good. Thank you. So the particular example you mentioned was for the net zero example, and I know it kind of the projects revolve around green technology and something to do with natural resources, the kind of thing. So is there any information available on the website where we can go and see to kind of apply for the projects with my initial discussion, something around robotics and AI? Is there anything we can go and explore on the website? I know the example you provided was for net zero. Probably my area will not cover in the net zero example. But
yeah, no, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I'll excuse me, I'll put in the chat the two kind of the main website links, and you can type in some keywords and it will come through there for that. As I mentioned earlier, there's 27 Innovate UK grants.
Okay.
I think there's 112 UKRI grants as well.
Great.
But don't get too excited, because lots of them are kind of public funded and other means. But absolutely there are. But yeah, this is a real investment of your time to make sure there are the right ones available. So look at your business. I know yours and Anne was robotics, but robotics, what's it going to do? Is it a robotic in a lab? You know, is it going to be a robot on the street? You know, think about that application of your process, and that's where hopefully you could link it to a grant application.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Me, of
Nigel.
course. What else? You'd expect that, wouldn't you? Graham, I'm many things. I'm a university, but well, I'm not a university. Well, I kind of Heather will giggle at that. I'm a university. Yeah. I run a company also called Buckingham Business Enterprises Limited. And why do we have that? We have that because when I started this many years ago, we used to have a degree where students had to start a real business to get their degree. Now, the young company is a wholly owned subsidiary of the University of Buckingham, which is, of course, a registered charity, etc., etc. Again, you talked about this loan. What kind of loans? Are they talking relatively small ones?
No, they're R&D loans, so they have to be used for R&D purposes, and they are from 100k to £2 million, and up to 7-year repayment, and I think it's 7.4%. So they're really competitive.
Absolutely.
And let me find the website link, which I've just put two others in the chat here. Nigel,
You're good.
and you can have a look at some further detail. But essentially, they are R&D focused loans supported by Innovate UK.
I mean, it's very similar then to the ones in which are designed around universities, but aimed at companies, perhaps even collaborating with universities on that angle. Is that the kind of angle you're coming at, or do you tend to get the collaboration coming from the university side, or is it either or?
No, so the loans specifically are just really are just finance loans essentially, but more on the R&D focus. There are criteria for them.
Yeah.
It is dependent, of course, on the R&D application essentially. So if there is a collaboration opportunity, that needs to be considered, because the loan is funded to a company, and a company will need, you know,
Obviously
3 years
the
of
guarantees
accounts,
and the whole procedures,
guarantees,
and how many other loans, etc. I mean, all the usual,
Exactly.
which we'd
Usual
expect,
financials.
the usual kind of stuff. Okay, now it's because, again, one of the things about this Sustainable Innovation Enterprise Unit is it's not just aiming at businesses, but sustainability is, I hope people are recognising now, is for everybody, and. It's trying to produce not only the kind of people who could actually make it happen, because as you know, in sustainability, a lot of talk about it, and then there's this big silence until somebody actually does something and achieves something. As the look on your face tells me you've been there and seen it. What we would try to do is create some people who can actually do that. But on top of that, we are surrounded by ancient buildings in the University of Buckingham, and net zero for that is a challenge, which I know there's been some bits and other things out about it already, and we're trying to see if there's some angles we could work on there. We've got to do something about it in the university, so that makes it a point that is serious for us, because if we're going to get to net zero, these ancient, I don't know if you've ever seen the University of Buckingham, just take a look on Street View. And apart from our nice new building, which is 6 years old, everything else is either 1970s, which never thought about it, or the 1770s or 1670s. Well, up to the 16th, but seriously old buildings.
Yeah. No, I'm aware. I think that the positive news of this, though, is net zero is a government objective.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's on the agenda, and, you know, I'm going to read the news after this call and see what Rachel Reeves has done about it in more format, hopefully. But because it's on the agenda, there are hopefully angles that you can work towards from a building perspective, or from an internal perspective, or whatever it may be. So that, unfortunately, that's how it shouldn't work, but that's how it does work. So yeah, I'll see if I can find the link to send through, Nigel, and explore further. Happy to have a chat though.
If you speak to Heather afterwards, off record and off the thing, she'll tell you the fun engagement we had with net zero in Buckinghamshire. The look on her face tells you all, doesn't it already? Won't say anymore, because good stuff. Now, Graham, great job, because you've said it as it is, which is vital, because a lot of people come into this and don't recognise the hassle of it. But I think that point about if it's significant, you've got to look at it from your own viewpoint. If it's significant for you and you can spend the time, Mike, doing it, I know that's the problem, then, and especially with collaboration, if you can find some way with other people, I reckon that would be the way I'd go for it. But I think you agree, Graham, don't you?
I do, and one thing I haven't mentioned here, and I'll just put it in the in the open now, is we did have earlier in the year a grant which was called a Smart Grant. So it was very, very open. It got lots of people to apply, and there was great funding available up to the tune of, some people up to £500,000. But it's been paused, and it's been paused to review, and take my Innovate hat off for a moment. This call is recorded, unfortunately. Don't send it anyway, Heather. I'm hoping that it will come back in a guise that gives less money to more people, so that you could get that 30k, 50k to develop an MVP or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
And hopefully a cleaner, smarter application process. And we saw last year there were some application processes that took part of a video call as the application as well. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction. Yeah, indeed.
This is stepping into the 19th century almost.
I know. Crazy.
Sorry, I'm an old cynic again. Yeah, but I'm serious. You're doing your best in the circumstances you have. And what you're doing is spreading the word and trying to get people to have a go at least. And the great thing is there's people on here who had never even, not even sometimes even heard of BBF. So, the message is getting down there. We just got to keep spreading the word, though. There we go. Good stuff.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Nigel.
Yeah. All
Thank
good.
you, Nigel. Any more questions? Okay, so I think I'm just leaves for me to wrap up today's session. Graham, really insightful. Thank you very much indeed. It's been really helpful, and I was delighted to hear you say there's still human beings at the other end of the application process. Thank goodness for that, because hopefully that will negate some of Mike's issues about applying for the wrong things and the computer says no. We can always hope, I guess. Just before we close, if I don't know how many of you have actually used Buckinghamshire Business First for support and advice. These are just some of the areas where we can support you. So every company, the workforce, so key. We talk about business plans so much. Everything boils down to money. Is everything in the right place and in the right time? Where are we going? How do we want to get from A to B? But have you got the right people to get you from A to B, and the right number of people? And where are you going to get them? And have they got the right skills? Any issues like that, please talk to us. We have the Business Growth Programme who can support you and help your growth plans. And we have a whole team of business advisors who can do that. And we provide business support across a whole raft of things. Networking, getting to meet other businesses, business awards, these power hours. We've got another one tomorrow, or in fact, I've even got some dates for some of the next events that are taking place. So tomorrow is actually all about team power, and it's a very workforce focused one. But we've also got other events such as the biggest missed opportunities in your Google Ads account. That could be an interesting one. Or perhaps you just want to get out there and do some business networking, the all important thing. And that's one over at High Wycombe on the 9th of July. And we have what we call our business leaders dinners, some of our biggest businesses that you can get to meet at a dinner, and that will be at the Latimer Estate near Chesham on the 17th of July. So you're welcome to join all of those. And in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can, a whole raft of methods. You can pick up the phone and do it old school. So thank you for attending this event. Thank you for taking the time out. And please keep in contact with Bucks Business First and keep an eye out for future events and power hours, as we call them, like this one. Thank you for coming.